Coming to you from the mobile Hudson Media Group studio, right here in the Uribe compound, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, folks, if you've been watching the news feed and certainly the news cycle in recent days, you've seen that the President of the United States has taken on a new foe currently, and that is indeed the social media platform known as Twitter. Now, editorials have been bursting all throughout the news cycle from different news organizations. And it seems like they all have one thing in common: the president is going to war against Twitter. Now, let me give you some facts here to sort of unravel why this is so important in the long term instead of sort of the short-term attention that it's getting. Now, let's be aware, ladies and gentlemen, that again, in sort of like the arena of politics, really, it doesn't overly always become a dispute over facts, but more so over values. And right now, what the president's alleging, and I think many of us can sort of agree on, is that indeed Twitter can risk blurring that line of distinction. Now, no American, not even the president, has the inherent right to a social media account. Now, tech companies such as Facebook and Twitter are free to ban any of their users if they see fit. Now, they're free to fact check anyone they want to as well, and ultimately to create a framework of acceptable speech and to enforce their policies either consistently or capriciously. Now, they're free to accuse the President of the United States, and only the President, if they see fit, of being a liar. But they're, of course, free to do all of these other things as well, even if they shouldn't. Now, for example, in recent days, after years of pressure from the media and even Democrats, Twitter labeled two of the President's recent tweets in which he had claimed that the use of mail-in ballots for large numbers of people would, quote, be substantially fraudulent and could result in a, quote, rigged election as potentially misleading. Now, it's a mistake for any platform to drop its neutral stance and take on fact-checking duties, a task that's going to be impossible to accomplish either objectively or indeed effectively. It's going to corrode trust in the brand, but it won't change a single mind. Now, once Twitter began tagging some tweets and not others with, quote, what you need to know, it might indeed be staking out partisan positions. Now, the Trump tweets, again, have precipitated its first election-related fact-check, and obviously this is a good example of it. It would have been far more reasonable for the social media giant of Twitter to label Trump's, let's say, perhaps what could be construed as ugly and libelous tweets about Joe Scarborough, the former congressman out of Florida and the current host of Morning Joe on MSNBC, as misleading. Instead, though, Twitter decided to inaugurate its policy by alleging that the President of the United States had dishonestly claimed that mail-in ballots would lead to, quote, a rigged election. Now, even if this contention was entirely baseless, it would be as untrue as saying that Russia rigged the election, which it didn't. Now, a claim that many politicians, such as Congressman out of California, Adam Schiff, and even Congresswoman and the Speaker of the House currently, Nancy Pelosi, along with major media outlets, have been making for years. But while the president's rhetoric about voting is debatable, it is also well within the normal parameters of contemporary political discourse. It's not exactly unsubstantiated to assert that more mail-in ballots would indeed lead to more voter fraud, as Twitter claims. Now, there are dozens of instances of potential voter fraud and that have been investigated every single year. As a matter of fact, the Heritage Foundation, a nonpartisan think tank, has cataloged over 1,200 prosecuted cases of voter fraud in recent years. Now, folks, let me be very clear about something, because it's certainly a topic that matters to me as someone who's center-right and even, in some instances, can hold some very conservative positions. We know that Twitter has indeed demonstrated a very liberal bias for a certain amount of time. Now, this week, alleging that the president's tweet about potential mail-in ballots being fraudulent and could indeed, contribute to a rigged election, well, that's all true. And one of the things I've talked about on this program repeatedly is the fact that vote-by-mail fraud is indeed real. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm hoping you have a longer memory. But do we all recall what happened late last year in Hoboken with Frank Rea and his despicable band of degenerates who attempted to influence an election some time ago? Now I know what many Hoboken residents might say: oh, well, Frank Rea had no chance of winning, so what's the harm? We know what the harm is, folks. The harm is that they're trying to subvert democracy. And I get it that New Jersey's always had a bad reputation about machine politics, and even, it varies from county to county. But in the Mouse Square City in recent years, Frank Rea and his band of degenerates did everything they possibly could to unduly influence an election by bribing individuals, whether it was at housing projects in Hoboken or anywhere else in the Mouse Square City. That was wrong. Now, certainly the federal judge in the case, I think, went too lightly and too leniently on Frank Rea in his sentence. And of course, by enabling his group of rats who, quite frankly, squealed on him, doesn't say much about the unity of that entire enterprise. But right now, folks, let's think about what vote by mail fraud represents. It represents a concerted effort to, again, do a disservice to democracy. And as we've all known in recent years, Twitter has done a considerable job in trying to silence conservative voices. It's a fact. It's not hyperbole. It's not speculation. It's not hearsay. It's fact. You can Google it. Now, of course, the President of the United States, you or I, certainly don't have a right to a social media account. It's a privilege. Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram collectively can all make a decision as to who indeed can be a subscriber. So I'm not going to fault them on that because, again, at the end of the day, we don't have to use any of those social media platforms. A lot of us do it for multiple reasons: for work, for pleasure, for profit, or for marketing. Whatever it is that interests you about social media platforms, again, we don't have a right to it. And these companies, again, as a private enterprise, have every providence, as they say, to make sure that we don't have to use those platforms. But to sort of live in the dark and say that Twitter doesn't try to silence conservative voices or right-leaning voices is absolutely just ludicrous. I mean, for all that we see on the left and some of the toxicity by liberals on social media, only Twitter now this week decided to label the president's tweets about vote-by-mail fraud as troublesome and decided to start fact-checking them. How about the fact-checking for the last 3 years when Democrats in Congress spent millions and millions of dollars, on a deceptive and, let's be honest, a waste of taxpayer dollars in these nonsensical investigations about Russia or anything else? Folks, here's a newsflash. Donald John Trump in 2016 won the election fair and square. There was no help by Russia. There was no help by anyone else. People in this country, at the total of over 62 million people, felt that Donald Trump was a better candidate than Hillary Clinton. And I know for many friends of mine that are Democrats and liberals and progressives, that's a bitter pill to swallow. And all they've done for the last 3.5 years is attempt to undermine this president and inundate his office, and more so bother the Justice Department with these frivolous and nonsensical investigations, which have turned out to be nothing. We all know that anything involving collusion was a hoax. Anything involving the Ukraine was a hoax. But you wouldn't know that by a lot of social media platforms. And throughout this entire time, did Twitter ever bother to try to attempt to fact check Adam Schiff or Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Ilhan Omar? Of course not. They're more than willing to perhaps not necessarily censor, but limit the free speech of certain conservatives and certain Republicans, not just in Congress, but out there in the news media. Folks, I don't know about you, that's not equitable. That's not fairness. That's not equality when it comes to, never mind journalism, but the usage of social media platforms. So you know what? If the president wants to go to war on Twitter and the president wants to use an executive order to hold them accountable or any other social media platform, well, good for him. And I'm glad the Justice Department will follow suit. Because for far too long, entities like Twitter have gotten away with, sort of social media murder. It's about time that they be held accountable. And if the president of the United States is going to lead the charge, I know many Americans will follow him in making sure that Twitter and any other of the aforementioned social media platforms are held responsible for what many may view as irresponsible and downright reckless behavior. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. In the latest edition of the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talking to Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking to Hudson from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet, was the distinguished councilwoman from Ward B in Jersey City, Miss Mira Prinz-Arey. And we spoke for over 75 minutes on a multitude of different topics. And here are some highlights for your consideration. First of all, we discussed the legacy of Michael Youn and what it meant to work with him on the city council. Of course, the councilwoman had a lot to say about the legacy of Michael Youn.
And I know in Jersey City, where there have been so many positive cases and also deaths, one really notable one that hit a lot of Jersey Cityans hard was the passing of Michael Youn. And, Michael's a guy who I got to know a little bit. He was a gentleman to come on this show a couple times with me. And, Michael was just this guy that whether it was a ribbon cutting or going to a council meeting or just going to his business on Central Avenue or just talking to him, he just had this smile that could brighten up a room. I was so jealous of him because I can't tie a bow tie like him. Like I can go on YouTube and watch a video for an hour and I'll still mess it up. It's like, God, like damn, like this guy really knows how to tie a beautiful bow tie. But Michael was such a wonderful person. He was a great public servant, but even more importantly, like he was a good dad and a good granddad and just he was a good citizen. I just want to get your thoughts on how you remember Michael Youn.
Oh, when we got the news, it was devastating. First of all, I really don't quite have words for that part of it. But working with Michael was fantastic. He, when I first came onto council, you have your meetings with everybody and you kind of get to know each other. And he was always incredibly generous with his time. He, was very funny. And he was very, very warm, and he had that big, broad, open smile, which I think made so many people just immediately comfortable with him.
Yes.
Right? Like
yes.
he just had that very open face, and he was also incredibly smart, and knowing that he was a very successful businessman, one of the things I always wanted to talk with him right off the bat was, how do you look at the budget? How do you look at the numbers? And so he, would invite me to his office in the Heights. We'd have some great conversations, and we did not agree. There were, a couple of times, where we very seriously just went at it. But the thing about the council that I work with is that you can't have those kind of fights and you can't have that kind of passion without having some trust and respect for your colleagues and to know that you can work it out and work through it. And Michael was first and foremost, he was a fighter. There was, so many times when he would just go to the mat and you always knew when it was coming because he had a couple of key phrases or a couple of facial reveals, right? Where he said, if, I'm scratching my head, I'm dumb, I'm not dumb, or he would ask a question. It was a very pointed question, and then he would follow it up with a very big smile. And so you always kind of knew where he was going, what kind of, he was just trying to get to the truth of it and to the point of it. And he always kept the, people of Jersey City first. That's why people love him and respect him, as they did throughout his whole career. When he first started his business in the Heights, to when he started getting involved with the Schindler administration. I think he was a deputy mayor, if I remember correctly, at one point in time.
Correct.
And, just a really, long history of public service. And he was always in it for absolutely the right reasons. So, it's very strange right now because the council is meeting remotely. I've seen some of my council colleagues, but we've not all been together since since the beginning of March, and it's just very, it's very strange. His presence is lost, and I was very fortunate to know him, and he, our roundabouts made me a better council person.
Next, we discussed the importance of trying to keep Jersey City affordable for lifelong residents, and more specifically, how it's affecting her constituents in Ward B. Let's check out what she had to say.
This is a problem that certainly precedes you in your time in office in Ward B as a councilwoman. But I got to tell you, when I keep seeing development throughout Jersey City, I worry about lifelong residents that have called Jersey City their home. That and notwithstanding everything that went into the hoopla with the rebound, we all know the chaos that caused among people on social media, people going to the council meetings. But it just seems that I'm still viewing development taking place in all parts of the city. I know Ward B is no exception. What can you tell your constituents tonight? Because I'm sure at the back of their minds, they're going to be thinking, at some point, priced out of here. And I've called this area my home, but I may not be able to afford it much longer. Is there any relief on the way, or is there anything you can tell your constituents tonight that, you know what, you're not going to get overrun by development, you're not going to get suffocated by these sort of escalating rents?
Right. So there are a couple of things that are happening, and the first thing, there are two ad hoc committees that we had started before, like pre-COVID. One was around taking a look at our rent control policies and how we can, make them better, make them a little bit tighter. And then the other thing is around inclusionary zoning, and I think that inclusionary zoning is going to be incredibly important. With rent control, it resolves for some problems, and it helps keep affordable, apartments on the market. But there's no affordability controls in for like a landlord to rent, right? So if you're a landlord and you have a rent control building, you're going to rent to the best tenant, right? So maybe maybe they can afford more, maybe they can afford less. That's really nobody's business, but that's the nature of that market. With inclusionary zoning, it would have set-asides for affordable apartments, and we're considering what that's going to look like now, what the mix is going to be from, as low as, 30% average median income up to 120% average median income. And I raised that question because when the planning department did their housing element, we found, and this is probably not a surprise for a lot of people, there's affordable apartments for people who are on the low end, and then the people who are on the higher end don't necessarily need to avail themselves of that. It's all of the people in the middle. It's the middle income families. It's the kid getting out of college who needs a starter apartment, right? Like, when was the last time you heard anybody? I remember when I was first looking for my first apartment 25 years ago, and I had friends lamenting the fact that there was no starter apartments, because starter apartments in San Francisco were $600 a month for your own one-bedroom apartment. And so, so that I think is going to be some very important policy decisions we're working on and are going to be making over hopefully the next year. COVID has put a pause on all of that. We were hoping to have these things kind of like come to council now, right? So in the months of March, April, and May, and now we're going into June. But we're still working on them. We're still having, we'll eventually get back to discussions about them. And I think that, this is a broader conversation, but I know that Councilman Navarro has talked about bringing back tax abatements for affordable housing, and I'm not sure where I sit on that, but I do know that if it's a tool in our toolbox to make apartments affordable, we should definitely be using it. So, the challenge with the tax abatements, though, is how it relates back to the school board and how it relates back to, the district getting funding. So, that's, I put forth a resolution, I guess 2 years ago now. Feels like just yesterday. But to request that 25% of any future tax abatements goes to the board of, goes to the school district, in particular set aside for building maintenance and new facilities, right? Because that to me is one of the biggest needs right now.
Certainly, it was a very informative and illuminating episode with the councilwoman from Ward B in Jersey City. And you can listen to the episode in its entirety, once again, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking to Hudson. While you're home under quarantine, folks, download it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet, and you'll certainly enjoy all of my guests I've had in 2020. And now to some local stories for your consideration. And let's start off in Jersey City, where it seems that Grubhub and Uber Eats are indeed in the political doghouse. Now, a shout out to the Jersey City Times and a great editorial by Aaron Morrill of the website. Now, again, if you're not familiar, that not since the financial crisis have we seen much of the legislation aimed at a specific industry. Now, cities including New York, Boston, Washington, Seattle, and even Los Angeles have enacted emergency legislation limiting the fees that these companies themselves can charge their client restaurants. Now, as a matter of fact, on May 7th, citing the declared state of emergency, Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop, supported by the City Council, followed suit with an executive order drastically limiting such fees. Now, the order will undoubtedly save local restaurants money, but here's the quagmire. Once the state of emergency ends, so too will the executive order, and the fees will return to their previous predatory levels. Now, the problems of strangulating online deliveries fees is a long-time problem, and of course, it does need a long-time solution. Now, the moral and political case for a limit on online ordering platforms is indeed compelling. Now, with many restaurants completely closed under the state of emergency, those that are remaining open are relying solely on takeout and delivery business. Now, this has provided a bonanza for both Grubhub and Uber Eats alike, which is armed with piles of venture capital and have indeed gobbled up an increasing amount of your favorite restaurant's online business, charging anywhere from 15% for simply taking the order to a whopping 35% for handling the actual delivery. Now, many Jersey City residents have written to not just the Jersey City Times, but also the Hudson County View, the Jersey Journal, and the Hudson Reporter, respectively, and have really put some very serious accusations out there that even for struggling restaurants that are already hobbled by COVID-19, that's real money that they're charging when it comes to delivery fees. And even before the pandemic itself, the fees that were being paid to the middlemen were indeed burdensome. But at least restaurants were operating on all cylinders back then and could rely on more profitable dining services and for some alcohol sales to help cover the very fixed expenses. Now, for many eateries, the excessive fees are indeed posing an existential threat to the delivery industry themselves. And folks, when I read this editorial, I get a great job there by the Jersey City Times on this, it got me thinking about how upset we get when we're overcharged. Now, we know that at the onset of the pandemic, we know that price gouging was indeed a serious problem at many sort of small businesses and even sort of the bigger chain stores, for some example. But let me tell you something. This is something that should really capture your eye. And for Jersey City residents specifically, who rely so much on Grubhub and Uber Eats, this is something that can certainly applaud the mayor and the city council for wholeheartedly. Folks, these are tough times, and we're trying to make the most of every dollar that we have. Some of us are still working, and some of us perhaps are collecting unemployment, or even some are still waiting to collect unemployment. So regardless of which category you correspond to, the fact of the matter remains that money is tight for all of us. And when we see some of these predatory practices by Grubhub and Uber Eats, I think it's reprehensible. So kudos again to Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop and the City Council for holding them accountable. And I'm hoping that other municipalities throughout New Jersey and even throughout the country will do the very same thing. They don't deserve to do this to their hard-paying and dedicated customers. And I'm sure, folks, at some point when the pandemic passes and we can return to some sense of normalcy here in New Jersey, we'll go back to dining out. Listen, the weather will be warmer, it'll be nicer, and the sun will be a lot longer during the day. So of course we'll want to be dining outside, having a nice alcoholic beverage, and eating a very good meal. And with that comes, of course, the burden of how much we're going to spend on dining. But even before we get there, we have to sort of worry about delivery fees right now. And as far as I'm concerned, you know what? Shame on Uber Eats and Grubhub for trying to take advantage of residents who in many instances are operating on very fixed incomes. I'm hoping in the weeks and months ahead, we'll see some sort of relief on this matter. But right now, it seems like these predatory practices will still be in existence unless we call them out. And now let's go to the Mile Square city of Hoboken for another important story. And a shout out to John Highness with the Hudson County View for their report on this. And ladies and gentlemen, following an executive order by Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala, fitness clubs in the Mile Square city can indeed apply for a permit to host outdoor workouts. Now, let me just give you some facts here to sort of unravel what's going on in Hoboken. Now, Hoboken fitness clubs can now apply for a permit to host outdoor workouts with up to 15 people, as a result of an executive order signed this past week by Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala. Now, the directive was signed in anticipation of certain gymnasiums and fitness centers being allowed to reopen at a limited capacity, as determined by Governor Phil Murphy. Now, certainly the difficulties of social distancing in indoor locations still remains a problem, but at least outdoors, it might be much more manageable. Now, the city is indeed encouraging fitness clubs to utilize outdoor spaces as much as practically possible for workouts, given recommendations from the U.S. Center for Disease Control, which includes, again, responsible social distancing. As a matter of fact, the mayor's office put out a press release this week, and it reads as follows, quote, "Our gym and fitness clubs have been hard hit during COVID-19. We recognize the major challenges faced during a gradual reopening, with indoor facilities not always having the room for social distancing or the capability to reduce capacity. Allotting spaces for outdoor classes provides an added option for safe and socially distanced workouts that make the best possible use of our public space. Now, while the governor has in place an explicit timetable on when gyms will be able to reopen here in the Garden State, even with a court battle pending with the South Jersey gym, in terms of its weight room that was openly defying state orders in recent weeks, the governor went on to say on May 21st that fitness facilities could reopen in a matter of weeks. The governor also went on to say, quote, "We think allowing businesses to utilize public space to host outdoor fitness classes is an outdoor and a very excellent first step in reopening gyms while openly promoting public health and well-being throughout the state." Now, without a doubt, folks, listen, during this pandemic, many of us who enjoy going to the gym, I know I've been going a little bit stir crazy. Now, I'm not really one of those people. I can work out moderately at home. But as we all are aware on our social media platforms, whether it's on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, we've been inundated with people having panic attacks because they can't go to the gym. And we've been seeing certainly obnoxious and, quite frankly, irritating workouts on our social media platforms. I get it. You missed a gym. You're having anxiety. You're having a panic attack. Listen, it's not the end of the world. You can still work out at home, but we don't always have to be made aware of it. Okay? If you want to work out at home, do so, but don't do it or broadcast it for the entire world to see. And this is something that sort of bothers me about gym rats. Now, again, I understand I'm not the most physically fit person, nor do I need to be. I'm someone that has maintained a relatively healthy lifestyle, and certainly if I watch what I eat and I exercise moderately at home, I'll be in good physical health. But I understand that for many of us at home, working out has become indeed a ritual. It's something that's therapeutic, and even something that is sort of part of our regular daily routine. And I understand that while we're home, we can't be going to the gym, we can't be lifting weights, we can't be on the treadmill, we can't be going to CrossFit, we can't be, lifting up tires or climbing rope or whatever the hell else people like to do with some of these elaborate workouts. But nevertheless, folks, hope is on the horizon, and as you can tell in Hoboken, the mayor is indeed taking some necessary steps, and I think some precautionary ones, to make sure that those who want to work out can do so in an outdoor space and do it responsibly with social distancing and even the necessary face masks to make sure that we flatten the curve, not just in Hoboken, but throughout all the municipalities in Hudson County. I'll keep you posted, folks, here in the weeks and months ahead as to which gyms reopen and ultimately whether all your favorite gym rats online can indeed go back to normal and be at the gym each and every day, flexing their muscles, working on every part of their body, and at the same time, being as fit and healthy as they can possibly be. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air, please go to their websites, www.hmgtvshows.com, www.livestream.com/hmgtv, and www.njonair.com. Make sure you like them both on Facebook and follow them on Instagram and Twitter. And don't forget that live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., you can listen to the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. While you're home under quarantine, download the episodes from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet, and I know you'll definitely enjoy them. And if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, you know it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. New episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.